Hey everyone, I'm Tim, and welcome to the Adventure Mind podcast, where we explore the intersection of outdoor adventure and mental health. Today, we're going to talk about adventure as therapy and why it works. This is not about replacing professional therapy, but acting as a powerful support tool for mental and emotional health. Adventure and nature in general are excellent for therapy, but that doesn't mean you should stop seeing your therapist. I'm seeing a therapist and it is doing wonders for my mental health, really helping me tackle some difficult things that I've been dealing with. And, it's really important if you are seeing a therapist that you continue seeing a therapist. And if you aren't, maybe you should consider it. I think it really, everybody could benefit from having a therapist, a professional that can help you, figure things out and make your life better and become a better person. But this episode is about how adventure can act as a form of therapy. For me personally, whenever I have something challenging going on in life, I lost my mom a few months ago to cancer. Very, very difficult time getting out in nature, particularly the Everest Base Camp trek, which I did a couple months after she passed. She knew about that trip and she was super excited about it, and she would have loved to hear about it. But I did find on that trip a lot of healing and a lot of therapeutic value from being out in nature, being on an adventure, doing something difficult. And I honestly really felt like she was there with me. My brother went with me as well. He was there. But I felt like my mom was kind of looking out for us. The trip really was just perfect. We had crystal clear views of Everest Base Camp every day, pretty much. And the weather was perfect. Everybody on our trek in our group successfully completed their trek to Everest Base Camp, and everything just went perfectly. And I feel like she was looking out for us in that situation, but so therapeutic and so healing for dealing with something difficult like a loss of a family member. So, sometimes talking isn't always enough. It definitely helps, and talking to the right therapist definitely helps. And sometimes, venting can feel really good. Sometimes, just talking through a problem or a situation can definitely help you find some clarity and, work on things and become a better person, and a healthier person. But sometimes talking isn't enough. And sometimes you need to explore movement and experience and challenge. Sometimes this reaches places that talking just can't get to. I have definitely found this to be true, particularly movement, moving your body and hiking, backpacking, trekking, whatever it happens to be, even kayaking or riding a motorcycle. I talk about that a lot on this show too. Any kind of movement and activity that is outdoors in nature and it has a challenging aspect to it does wonders for therapeutic value. So movement is important. Experience is important. Experience being, going out and doing something new and exciting and adventurous. It definitely helps. Also, adventure creates a healthy distraction. Sometimes just focusing on the trail or the weather or the next step, it really quiets the mental noise and the overthinking. I am a major, major overthinker, but when I'm out on the trail, hiking, walking, whatever, that overthinking really goes away. I do a lot of my best thinking on an adventure, but it is not an unhealthy overthinking version of thinking. It is a healthier, more clear, more focused form of thinking about issues in life or things that I'm working on, things that I want to improve on, goals that I want to achieve, personal relationships that might need work, things of that nature. Adventure definitely helps quiet the overthinking and distract you from the overthinking of negative, thought patterns. But as far as like getting some good thinking done, it's definitely possible on an adventure. And I use adventure very frequently to think about decisions I have to make or obstacles I'm facing in life. But adventure is a great distraction from overthinking and just mental noise in general. I don't know if you can relate to this, but like I have a very active brain and an active imagination, and I spend a lot of time, unfortunately, dwelling on the past and overthinking things that have happened in the past that I can't change anymore. It's something I'm working on with my therapist, but being out in nature really quiets those thoughts, and it just puts things into perspective, and things that happened in the past just don't seem as important as what's happening in the moment when I'm on an adventure, when I'm doing something challenging, when I'm in a beautiful place, in the desert or the mountains or whatever it happens to be. I find that really quiets the negative thoughts, and it's really invaluable for someone like me. It can be kind of miserable living with an overactive mind that focuses on like negativity and past mistakes and things like that. So yeah, focusing on the trail and the challenge in front of you definitely helps. One step at a time on the trail, something difficult, climbing a mountain, summiting a peak, it's a great healthy distraction from overthinking. Also, nature provides emotional space. Being outdoors gives room to process thoughts and feelings without pressure or judgment. I found that solo adventures in particular are really good for this. It creates a space without distraction, without unhealthy distraction, to kind of get in touch with your emotions and process your thoughts and feelings without pressure, meaning you have the time when you're out there. There's no deadline on this type of thing, on this type of work. It's an ongoing process, but also going out in nature alone, there's no judgment. And also talking to a therapist, there should be no judgment in that situation as well. But I have found that being out in nature by myself, I feel a definite lack of judgment from the world around me. And I'm able to kind of get in tune with what's going on, what kind of emotions I'm processing. And sometimes if you don't process those emotions in a healthy way, they turn into anxiety and depression. And so it's important to get out in nature, get on an adventure, and give yourself some space to feel your emotions out in nature and in a healthy way process that type of stuff. So that is definitely important. Next thing is that doing hard things builds strength and resilience. I talk about this a lot because it is that important. Doing challenging things outside creates mental resilience, helps you cope with mental health issues. For me personally, doing difficult things builds up mental strength that helps me deal with my anxiety and my depression in a much healthier way. Don't get me wrong, I still struggle and I still have issues that I'm working on with a therapist and also on my own out in nature. But doing hard things is so, so important as being a human being. It's so important to challenge yourself and push yourself. Making it through that, not only builds mental resilience, it builds confidence. It is just so, so important. There are so many benefits of doing difficult things outside and challenging yourself. Don't get me wrong, sometimes it's nice to just go sit by a lake and there's no real challenge involved in that. You just sit and ponder, and reflect on life, process your emotions. But I think it's important at least once in a while to kind of push yourself and put yourself in a situation that's a little bit scary in a safe way. I think it is so important, challenging yourself and pushing your limits and seeing what you're really capable of creates so much confidence and mental strength. That mental strength for me, I don't know how I would survive without having built that mental strength. I have a lot of PTSD, which I kind of mentioned earlier, with like things in the past that kind of haunt me. I don't know how I would ever be able to deal with that if I didn't have the mental resilience that I have from going on adventures and doing challenging things. And this has been ongoing for most of my life, and doing hard things is it's so rewarding and so worth pushing yourself through a struggle and a healthy struggle. Also, adventure forces presence. Basically, adventure naturally pulls you into the moment without needing mindfulness techniques. I find this to be really incredible. I have tried meditation in the past and it honestly just doesn't work for me because my mind wanders too much. I'm not saying that there isn't value in meditation. There definitely is. And that is why I've tried to do that. It just never really seems to work out for me. But I get a meditative state being on an adventure, hiking up a steep hill, in the desert or in the mountains with high up in elevation where it's hard to breathe and there's, a lot of challenges going on and the weather's maybe not cooperating. It forces me to be completely in the moment. And it is definitely like a mindfulness practice for me without having to like actively try to meditate and just sit there and meditate, like going out, putting one foot in front of the other, climbing a mountain, doing something difficult, whatever that happens to be, maybe rowing across a lake in a kayak that's, kind of windy and the wind is pushing against you, but you got to get across the lake. So you keep going. Doing things like that really pulls you into the moment and it becomes a meditative state. I've actually talked about this recently in another episode. When I was doing Everest Base Camp, it was such a meditative state. Like it was so challenging because it was so hard to breathe and so hard to move my feet, but I was just so focused on one foot in front of the other. And I was so pulled into the moment and I was in this like meditative Zen state where, I was in pain, I was struggling, but I wasn't feeling any of it. I was just so focused on one foot in front of the other. And it was such a meditative state. It was so, so incredibly rewarding. just the process of getting to base camp, not even the reward of actually getting to base camp, but just the process of getting there. The meditation that happens naturally in that situation is just, I don't know how else I could possibly attain that without years of practice of just sitting and meditating. And it just doesn't work for me. But I find that any kind of adventure, anything challenging, any struggle, outdoors in nature, it's my mindfulness practice. That's what I do for mindfulness in my life, and it works extremely well for me, and I think other people can probably relate to that. So yeah, adventure definitely forces presence in the moment and mindfulness, and it's an incredible technique to kind of practice mindfulness without having to just sit and meditate and try not to let your mind wander. It just happens more naturally on an adventure. Next thing is that identity beyond stress and labels. Basically, adventure helps people reconnect with who they are outside of work, roles in family or whatever, or just your struggles in general. Adventure really helps you get to know yourself on a deeper level, particularly solo adventures, but even adventures with other people. And as long as it's challenging and you're pushing yourself and you're accomplishing things and you're not leaning too much on the other person that you're with, being completely self-reliant and completely dependent on your own skill set, it really helps connect with who you are as a person, truly deeply at the root core of your being. Not on the surface, not, personality stuff, but just who you are as a person, what you're capable of, and the tools and skills that you're able to build along the way really help create an identity for yourself and a confidence, a quiet confidence for yourself. I feel like so much more myself on an adventure than I do at work or at home sitting in bed or sitting in front of the TV watching TV. I feel so much more myself when I'm out in nature and I'm doing something difficult. And I chase that feeling as often as I possibly can, sometimes to the point of burnout. I have a hard time with balance sometimes, but if I find something that works and makes me feel good, I'm going to keep doing it, sometimes in an unhealthy way. But with this particular situation with adventure, I think it is a healthy alternative to other things that I've used in the past to kind of cope with this. But, also, the stress of daily life, of work, deadlines, things like that, some family issues, whatever the case may be, you have an identity beyond that stress and the labels of society. And I think you can find that by going out into nature and doing something challenging. Let's talk a little bit about the healing power of solitude. I could do multiple episodes on this topic. I love talking about solo adventure and solo travel. Don't get me wrong, I have some friends that I really, really enjoy going on adventures with, but there is so much value and healing that comes from solitude. Intentional time alone outdoors can be so grounding. It doesn't have to be lonely. I mean, it can get lonely, but it's a practice and you get better at it. The more that you do it, that loneliness goes away. And being alone, being on your own, left to your own devices, it's so, so rewarding. I'm able to, reset my mind and kind of let go of things, really connect with myself and the earth and my emotions and process things. And just being alone and being self-reliant creates so much confidence, and it's so invaluable. I highly recommend anybody that does any kind of things adventurous and is into that kind of stuff. If you've never done something challenging alone, I would just highly recommend that you try that at least once. And I think that you're going to find a lot of value in that. And I think that you might chase that the way that I chase it. Like I said, I have friends that I love going out on adventures with, but there are times where I just need to go out and be alone, get in touch with myself, and just let the quietness of being alone in nature, just let life kind of catch up to me and kind of process things. Solo adventures are so, so incredible. I have always found that solo adventures create so much more growth as a person than going on an adventure with other people. Going on an adventure with other people will teach you a lot of skill sets, a lot of patience, a lot of teamwork, friendships, and things of that nature. But going solo, man, that will really cause some growth, some personal growth emotionally and everything as far as confidence and just your mental health in general. It is such an incredible tool for better mental health. I think it is so important to do hard stuff on your own once in a while. So next, let's talk about why adventure feels honest. Basically, nature strips away any distractions and pretenses, making it easier to face yourself truthfully. Kind of goes back to embracing solitude. Without those distractions, without social media and television or just noise, right? Without that noise, to just sit quietly by a river or a waterfall alone. Maybe having just done something difficult like climbed a mountain to get to a waterfall or a hot spring or a lake or whatever, you can really get to know yourself in that quiet. And sometimes you might find things that you're not crazy about that you want to change, and that's okay. You can bring that back into real life and work with your therapist on that. But sometimes you'll find things that you really do like that you didn't know about, and you can kind of build a better relationship with yourself, because let's be real, you are the only person that you're going to spend your entire life with. You should really work on that relationship and make sure that it's a healthy one, and make sure that you're somebody that you like to be around. And that is why being alone, solitude in nature, you really get in touch with who you are as a person and learn things that, build that relationship and build your appreciation for yourself as a person. Nature definitely strips away those distractions, and it definitely makes it easier to face yourself and kind of, maybe even do like a little shadow work kind of thing, which maybe we'll get into that a little more on another episode. But also let's talk about how to make adventure accessible as therapy. It doesn't have to be epic. It doesn't have to be a trip to, a national park. Even it could be a local park. Just moving your body in nature, doing something at least somewhat challenging, can be incredible for therapy. I mean, even just sitting in nature, even just sitting at a local park can be so rewarding as far as, therapy and therapeutic value. It doesn't have to be extreme. Small, consistent outdoor experiences definitely count, and they definitely have value. And I think it is so important that you do what you can and you do it consistently. If you're busy and you can't get away every weekend, just commit to, every other weekend or once a month, you're going to take a camping trip, or once a week, you're going to do an evening walk around your neighborhood outside in nature, maybe at a park or something. It can be accessible. It doesn't have to be something that's out of reach. You have the ability to attain this right now. I think everybody has the means to get out and just walk around in the fresh air and move your body. And I think it is excellent for therapy. And if you have a car and you can get yourself to a lake or a river or something, and you can sit there and ponder, I think that's incredibly valuable as well. But doing challenging things, I think, is the key factor here. Doing something challenging for yourself is so therapeutic. Anyway, adventure, it doesn't fix everything, but it creates a space where where real healing can begin. This is so, so important. Therapy is so important. If you're seeing a therapist, continue seeing a therapist, but I would highly recommend that you incorporate some nature and some adventure into your therapeutic routines and your self-care. I really appreciate working with my therapist. He gives me a lot of good insights. He challenges me. He asks the right questions, and we get to the root cause of some issues in my life, of problems that I have, and it's incredible. But also being alone out in nature, I get a lot of therapeutic value from that as well. I get really in touch with myself. I can get really honest with myself. I really get to know myself on a deeper level, and that is so valuable. And I think, they kind of go hand in hand, nature and adventure and therapy. I think those three things are pretty key to anybody that struggles with mental health issues or just wants to be a more emotionally healthy individual. It's so important. And like I said, you're with yourself your entire life. So you gotta work on that relationship and make sure that it's a good one. So anyways, thank you so much for listening to this podcast today. I hope some of this stuff resonated with you. Please leave a rating wherever you're listening to this podcast. It really helps grow the channel and helps other people find the podcast. If you found value in it, maybe share this with a friend, maybe somebody that you think can relate to some of this stuff, or maybe somebody that's struggling right now. Anyways, thanks so much for being here, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.